Good afternoon, everybody. Kian's gone broad and big, and I'm going to go much narrower. I'm going to talk about AI and education, specifically large language models, ChatGPT, Copilot, Claude, whichever one we're particularly using. And I'm going to focus on higher education and the impact that AI, this form of AI, might have on the way in which we teach and the way in which we do scholarship in our universities. AI is not the first technology. This is pictures of AI. If you Google search AI, this is what comes up. I won't get into what those pictures mean, but I'll leave them up there while we think of other things that have disrupted education. The book, the biro, the internet, all of these things disrupted education. And we're in a time where there's a new technology, and that technology is going to disrupt the way in which we work. Now, we can either step away from that, or we can engage with it and see how it moves, how it changes the way that we work, and how it changes the way our students are assessed, principally, on their learning. How do we measure their learning? How do we certify their learning? What is it that we're actually certifying and measuring in the credentials we give as a higher education institution? I'm looking at it from the perspective narrowly of academic writing. I'm the director of the Academic Writing Centre at the IOE. Not just because of that, I'm also a lecturer on various postgraduate taught courses, and we assess our students through their writing. Whether we carry out other formative forms of assessment, whether we incorporate developmental ideas within our writing, at the end of the day, they produce an assignment and we assess it based on how well they argue in the written form. Now, part of the problem, I'll get to this later, is that academic writing, the product itself is highly valued. And yet it's the process of writing, of producing that text, that encapsulates the learning, that guides the learning, that is the learning. By producing text, rewriting text, critically engaging with the ideas in it, and rewriting again that text, that's where the learning happens, not through the final polished product. I also want to briefly say, I don't want to get into side issues of broader than this, but it's called artificial intelligence. And I think we need to step back. Intelligence is a very dangerous word in the academic world. And it's led us into places that we probably shouldn't have gone. And the dichotomy artificial and human, again, is quite worrying. What do we think is artificial? And what do we think is human? And if human is just caring, and we've heard a lot about care today, if human is just caring, then I think that's got quite big implications that I won't have time to go into today. So I also don't want to focus on this slide because I think it's been very well explained by other people. The idea that AI is going to end humanity. It's Armageddon. I think is wrong because actually, as Kian says, the impact's already here. It's already out there. It's already changing things. It's changing us. It's changing the way we work and the way we relate to other people. So the catastrophe maybe is already here and we need to address it now. Lorna Campbell is a very interesting writer on this. She's pointed out it's there, it's out there. Our students are using it and they're being used by students in really interesting ways. So it's probably time to engage with that. And by engaging with that, we also allow ourselves the space to think this could be a starting point to try and rethink the way in which we ask questions about knowledge creation and the way in which we encourage the creation of certain knowledges. And again, a number of speakers have pointed out that our knowledge is quite narrow. I'm going to draw a couple of times on, we run a series of seminars on academic writing, and a couple of them in the last year have been really helpful for my thinking in this area. And I wanted to share some with you. First, there's two colleagues here. It's Klaus Munt and Mike Groves. Klaus from University of Nottingham, Mike Groves from Lingang University in Hong Kong. And they're experts on machine translation. They've worked for a number of years looking at the impact of machine translation. How do students use it and what impact does that have on their learning? And they've now started to look at ChatGPT, or they did a year and a half, 2 years ago. And they point out that, again, ChatGPT is just another tool. And we already had Grammarly. We already had spell check in Word. We already had the blue line and the red line on everything we write that guided us. We didn't question that. We didn't suggest that actually students shouldn't use spell check. We accepted it. We also accept final text that probably have been proofread by somebody else, by a colleague, by a mother, by a paid proofer. And we did worry about that, but we ignored the fact that that was happening because we valued that final text. We didn't worry so much about the process, we worried about the product. So Klaus and Mike suggest there, the important thing to remember is the tool isn't the craft. Okay, the important thing is the craft. How do we produce that text? How do we engage with the ideas that form that text? How do we put them together? How do we justify them? The form of the sentence isn't the most important thing. And Kieran, you talked about complementarity. And here, there's a technology that possibly could be very helpful for students who struggle to form that text because perhaps it's not their first language. Perhaps their education hasn't been formal and therefore they haven't been trained in rhetoric or in forming perfect sentences, things that we really value in academia. And yet they're not ideas. They're not knowledge. They're just a form, an accepted form of expression of that knowledge and a valued form. And we place the value on the writing rather than the ideas. And I think they're very helpful, very helpful. The other one I wanted to focus on was a woman called Helen Beetham, who also gave a talk to us about academic writing as parsing, and using the expression parsing as in pretending to be. And when you write academically, you pretend to be an academic. You pretend to be like us because you're mimicking our writing, you're mimicking our way of working. So what does it mean for a student to pass as an academic writer when AI can do that for them? AI can produce the text that they can hold, they can present, and they can pass as writers, but actually they didn't write that. So that, and Helen suggests that we need to renegotiate what we mean by writing. What do we want people? What's the purpose of that writing? And in making this argument, she doesn't, I think we've got to be very careful to sit between this fatalist idea that that's it, that's the end. The university can't do this anymore because AI is doing it for us, but also the fantasy that this will lead to greater inclusion, that this will lead to greater equity automatically. The future's not inevitable. The future of AI is not inevitable in HI. She makes a number of points that I think are really worth us thinking carefully about. The first one, and this is the big conversation in my university, is assessment. How do we reframe traditional notions of assessment so that we can think more carefully about what it means to pass? What is a competent writer? And there's one aspect which is to focus on originality, to focus on human experience. And a lot of the assignments that have been reshaped in the last couple of months at the Institute, we had a window of reassessment. We were allowed to change the assessments on our course. Normally it takes at least 2 years. This was done in a month. Such was the urgency to rethink how are we incorporate or how are we allowing students to use the tools that they're using while not losing the craft, not losing the process of learning that we all value so much. You need to change the assessment criteria, and one way of doing that is to place reflection within your assignments, to change the rubrics, to think about how can we emphasize criticality, how can we get students to look critically at text, whether they're produced by humans or produced by machines, and particularly how can we get them to become critical about machine-created text, engage with them. What are the assumptions behind that text? What's missing from that text? Why does that text change when you put in a different prompt? That sort of engagement, that critical literacy, seems to me to be a highly valuable thing outside the university, and will become increasingly important if we're surrounded by AI-generated knowledge, AI-generated texts, to be able to question them and see beyond the surface. She also encourages collaboration. Again, complementarity. There are ways in which this will be really helpful. We shouldn't close them down. At the Institute, and I think it's across UCL, there are 3 classes of AI in courses. You can either go for level 1, which is AI is banned. You're not allowed to use it. Now, that seems a bit silly because we can't detect it. So if we can't detect it, how can we ban it? But that's one. Not many people have gone for that. Level 2 says you can use it, but tell us you've used it. Acknowledge it. Yeah. Now that seems sensible, but quite limited. Level 3 is you have to engage with AI. Our tasks require you to use AI, evaluate its outputs, be critical about it, and produce your own reflection on that. And level 3 seems to me to be the logical direction we should go in, but obviously requires a lot of change. Helen also talks about the ethical considerations, and there's a lot written. You'll find huge amounts about the ethics of, it's really, we talk about academic integrity. How can we ethically use AI? How can we take a text that's been produced by AI and actually say that student has learnt, and this is evidence of their learning? How can we do that when we don't know who produced the text? But there are big questions to ask. Some of them are around guidelines. A lot of them, I think, are around transparency, just talking to students, finding out what they do. I spoke to a student yesterday about her work, and it was clearly been produced or edited or helped by ChatGPT. I didn't have a problem with it, but as soon as I mentioned it, the student went extremely red. She was concerned that I was picking her up on something she'd done wrong, that she transgressed by using this. Now, all of my students over the last year and a half have been using it. I teach predominantly Chinese students at the moment. Previously, their texts were difficult to understand. You had to work hard to get beyond the syntax, to find the ideas and the arguments. The last year and a half, I haven't had that problem. The texts are easy to read. Some of the ideas are good, some of the ideas are bad, just like as they were before. I don't rate those texts higher just because I don't have to work so hard to mark them. But I can mark them more quickly, and I can see the ideas and the arguments more clearly. So students are using it, but how do we maintain that academic integrity? That's just an aside, really. As I say, we can't detect. Turnitin, the system we use for plagiarism, doesn't detect AI. I'm sure there's lots of work going on of people trying to create systems that can do that, but there are some markers that are still there. Delve is a lovely one. This is a graph of, I don't know how they do this, but somebody measures the number of words used on the internet. And this is the use of the word delve in the internet. I think this was articles and abstracts. And you see the spike there, and you know what happened just before that spike. It was the introduction of ChatGPT. ChatGPT loves delve. Don't know why. No idea why. I don't think it's a particularly appropriate word for research. It's too general. It's too fluffy. You delve into something. It's quite imprecise. It's not. I wouldn't want to use it. So, and I say this quietly, but I read quite a few abstracts at this conference. There's quite a lot of use of the word delve in the abstracts of this conference. Again, that's no criticism, but it is the reality that this is just one example of ways in which we're led to use words for the reason that AI likes them. Not because our tradition likes them, or that they're correct, or they're the most appropriate words, just because it's normative. It decides that's the useful word. These are other words that ChatGPT apparently likes a lot, and I like quite a lot of those words as well. So I don't think they're very useful markers. The point is we can't really tell. Excuse me. So within a university, we start to think, well, how do we do this now? What is AI literacy? The last talk I gave was on digital literacy, and I said at the time, this use of the word literacy has got nothing to do with literacy. My background's in adult literacy research, and literacy here is used in terms of competence in doing something. Nothing to do with literacy. I don't know why they had to use that particular word, but they did. So we've got lots of forms of literacy that are actually competence. So how can we become competent users of AI? So I asked ChatGPT. And obviously, ChatGPT very quickly came up with a very comprehensive list. Now, we won't go through this. I'll give you some other frameworks for this. But this is just scraped from the internet. There's no criticality in here. There's no questioning of any of these values. There's no juxtaposition of possible alternatives. There's no accountability. No accountability at all. I have no idea where this comes from. I have no idea whose ideas were stolen by these data processing processes that large language models use. And also, there's no creativity in there. ChatGPT didn't think carefully about this. It just spewed it out. Okay? And I think this is where critical literacy comes in, because that seems to me to be a really useful exercise to do with students. Ask ChatGPT something and then question it. And maybe give ChatGPT a better question next time. Ask it not to do that, or ask it to do something different. If you ask ChatGPT to tell you, for example, what is interaction hypothesis in language learning? What's interaction hypothesis? It tells you. You then ask it, well, could you give me some academic references for that? It gives you some. Now, if you know anything about interaction hypothesis, you immediately know that those are really old references. You also, once you click, you realize those references quite often don't even exist. And yet, a student would present me a paper on interaction hypothesis with a series of references that I know are out of date, that I know don't exist. And the student, a process of engaging with the student and getting them to think about that seems to me to be a really, really positive way forward. Other people talk about AI literacy. A set of competencies here, enable individuals to critically evaluate AI technologies. So the first starting point here, and I like this description, is to critically evaluate the use. Not accept it, not use it, not have it as one of your, as the main tool you use, but to critically evaluate what it produces. Communicate and collaborate with it, work with it, complementarity again. Use it in order to achieve the things that you want to do, but do that critically. And it's a tool, it's an online tool at home, in the workplace. Now, lots and lots and lots and lots of AI frameworks for AI literacy already on the internet. I picked out a couple here. The general ones have these 5 categories, the things that we need to do. You know, we do need to, and I think they're fine. There's nothing wrong with them. They're useful. We do need to know what it is. We do need to understand where it comes from, what it represents. We need to be able to use it and apply it to different things. Using ChatGPT to generate ideas for an assignment, that seems to quite a good use of it. Using ChatGPT to change the referencing style from Harvard to APA, I did that two weeks ago. Saved me masses of time and was accurate, whereas I would have missed a couple of commas and a full stop that certain reviewers would be unhappy about. So that seems to be, how do I use it? How do I apply that in my life? But then evaluate it. Evaluate and recreate what it's produced for you. Don't just accept it. Cooperation and creativity. Creativity, ChatGPT is not creative. Humans are creative. So if they just accept what comes from ChatGPT, we'll lose that creativity. We'll no longer produce ingenious new things because ChatGPT, large language models, they look back. They're based on what's already known. They're not based on what we could know. They're not based on new ways of looking at what we know, which is where academic thought, knowledge creation has to come from. We have to know what we know, but we have to think about how what we know applies in the future world, in the current world, rather than just simply accepting it. And then ethics. Ethics is really important in this. At Aberystwyth University, the lady's name was, I can't remember now, sorry. But they produced, I think, a really simple guide for their staff that I like. Again, choose. Make informed choices about what you're going to do with it. Don't just accept it. Know the strengths and weaknesses of it. Critically evaluate it. Know about data protection. In UCL, we've been given Copilot rather than ChatGPT, and Copilot doesn't take what you put in and add it to the language model. Okay, so it's a closed system. And I think it was Helen Beathan who was suggesting, well, perhaps what we need to do is create our own large language models based on our own databases, which is all of us, all of the things in our libraries, all of the things in our Moodles and our courses, our materials. A database or a large language model that had learned from that would probably be quite different to ChatGPT, which has scraped everything from everywhere without really looking and thinking, why are we looking at that? Why is that good knowledge? Why did I choose? It's just taken everything in order to learn. The second one is to critique things. And again, every framework you look at puts at the center critique, criticality, question, don't accept, rework, ask new questions. And I think that's central and really, really important. And you critique it, as I say, you've got to ask, is this true? ChatGPT is not always true. And what's true? In an academics environment, we need to ask that question. Whoever. Kian stood up and talked now. We have to question whether what he says is true. We can't just accept what he says. We have to compare what he says with other things we've read, other things we've heard, with what the person next to us commented. That's how we develop knowledge, not by accepting other people's knowledge as truth. We accept that it could be the truth. We can question it. We can use our own personal experience, our own context, in order to better understand it and produce something new. And then, how do we use it? The academic integrity questions is really, really out there. So there are lots and lots of these frameworks that are being developed. Mechanisms for teaching it, less so. I've seen very little thought about how do we teach people to use AI? What do we do in our classes? There's a lot of, I'm not sure we can call it denial, but there's a lot of denial out there. In our round that we were allowed to change assessment, I don't know the figures, but I'm pretty sure it was maybe less than 20% of the courses changed. That means, in the vast majority, we're in the education and the social sciences, we assess through the 5,000-word essay. And some of that's changed. There's more reflection, there's more personal experience, but essentially we assess through the 5,000-word essay. So the vast majority of the assessment over there, I'm not sure it's over there, is still done through something that ChatGPT can actually do. I shouldn't say this aloud, but I put my own assignment for a module I teach, which is a module on practical language teaching. What you do in the classroom as a teacher, but I assess it by getting people to describe the classroom and theorize about why. Why did the teacher do that? That's related to a theory, interaction hypothesis, pair work, put people together, get them talking. So ChatGPT can do that too. In fact, did it quite well. Took me 3 or 4 prompts to construct at least half of an assignment that I have to be honest, I would have passed it. It wasn't great. It really wasn't great. Maybe a C. And I think at postgraduate level, most ChatGPT outputs about a C. It's not an A. Undergraduate level, I'm not sure. I don't teach much at undergraduate level, but I think you could get an A with a ChatGPT assignment. So if that's a change, our assessment needs to change and our way we teach it, and the incorporation of ChatGPT into what we do is really, really important. Now, this is the core thing, I think, for me. When you write, the process of writing is where the learning comes. A writer's changed by writing. This is all text, not just academic text, but I think particularly with academic text because of its representation as what we know and its relation to other texts that we all aspire to. We all know fabulous writers who we've loved reading their stuff and it's influenced us. And sometimes that's because they've got really good ideas. But quite often, let's be honest, it's because they express those ideas really effectively. They're eloquent, they're insightful, but the insight comes from the placement of those particular units of knowledge, units of language in order to express a complex idea. Now, that's writing, that's not thinking. By writing, the writer changes, the writer develops their ideas. Now, if ChatGPT does the writing, where's the learning? How are we learning? We're producing fabulous, correct texts. My students don't make grammatical mistakes anymore. That's good. But did they go through the hard work of writing that down, reading it and thinking, no, that's not what I meant? Or why did I say that? That doesn't match with what I said over here. ChatGPT can make those connections and make sure you don't make that mistake. You read through a text and you realize you've quoted somebody up here and quoted somebody down here who says completely the opposite. And then you understand how those two writers work together. And you can work to try and integrate their ideas. But you have to do the writing in order to do the learning. And we don't value the process enough, I think, currently in the universities. We value the products. We absolutely venerate those products. We love those products. Published an article. Didn't just publish an article in a good journal. Everybody loves it. Everybody's quoting my pithy, clever sentence that I formed. If I didn't produce that, if I didn't go through the process of thinking and learning, there's no value in that pithy sentence. There's no value in the quote that you've taken from my text and you've put in your text. Somebody else will then quote your text with my text inside it. There's no value if I didn't learn by producing that text. So there's a reciprocity between thinking and writing and thinking. If we can find ways in which our university courses are assessed, are driven by that reciprocity, by taking text and rewriting text, taking text and evaluating text, taking ideas and questioning them. And if we can find ways to build assessment processes that allow us to do that, that force us to do that, then students will leave our universities able to do the same thing in the rest of the world. In the workplace and home, in their leisure, they'll be able to question and to engage in some of the discussions that Kian is encouraging about the place of AI in our society. Just to finish, to engage or ignore, as I say, level 1 of our courses, level 1 that says, no, you can't use it, it's banned, just seems to me to be a bit silly. And I think we have to engage with this thing, just as we had to engage with the internet. You couldn't. Google, Wikipedia. Wikipedia was we questioned. Lots of our assignments were called Wikipedia assignments because students could go and basically get quite a lot of the information from Wikipedia. And we all said we knew. We knew when they'd done that. We didn't. We really didn't. Okay? And the internet's the same, and AI is the same. So I think we have to engage. By engaging, we can foster critical literacies. Goes back to Paulo Freire, that we've forgotten. Literacy is not literacy. Critical literacy is the important thing. Literacy, reading and writing, is not the important thing. That just leads to an understanding of the world, an engagement with the world, and the ability to transform the world. And if critical literacy is not the heart of what we do as a university, then I think we're probably doing it wrong. And what does it mean to be a competent writer? I'm a competent writer. I should be. My position, I have to be, really. I'm a competent writer. Why is that so valued? Why aren't my ideas valued rather than my ability to express those ideas in a very narrow, and let's be honest, not particularly creative form of writing? So the conclusion I come to is, we have to engage. We have to engage with AI. We have to engage with AI. Teachers, very, very frequently, things are done to teachers. As I'm learning, they're also done to care workers. Very frequently, we're asked to adapt to technology. adapt to the things that are given to us in the classroom. And perhaps what we really need to do is to say, we want it to adapt to us and our needs in the same way as Kian and Minda have explained, involve people, understand how they work before you launch this system. Now, ChatGPT is already there, but we've got space and we've got time and we can influence the development of the technology rather than just working reactively to it. Thank you all very much.
I'm going to allow one question. Very quick question. There's one there. You've asked a question before. You haven't asked a question before, I don't think. There. Quick question, quick answer.
Thank you very much. My question stems from your statement that students are falling trap into copying from ChatGPT very often without realizing what they are doing, and you are catching them in their assignments. So do you think we need to create awareness about this by treating AI literacy as one of these subjects, just like mathematical literacy or language literacy or any other subject? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I won't be that quick, but yes, we definitely do. We're planning it for next term. We're going to run workshops with all of our students in the first term. We've developed at the Writing Centre a webinar on use of ChatGPT within academic writing. UCL's got a compulsory short course that students have to do. But I think it'll really be at programme level. It's me sitting with my 20 personal tutees and saying to them, you can use ChatGPT. In fact, we're going to do it now. I'm going to ask it what interaction hypothesis is, and you're going to critique what comes out. Because as soon as they see that, yeah, it's visible, it's transparent, you're not going to be marked down for using it. It's not transgression. You can write perfectly well. You can use this as a tool. But as long as they understand that it's a tool, like Google Translate. My students were worried about translating using Google Translate. Why? Why spend so much time translating a 30, 40-minute interview from Chinese to English? Put it into Google. Get Google to do the first sweep for you. It saves so much time. But tell us that's what you've done. I analysed in Chinese and I translated it through Google into English, and then I rewrote the text because Google's good at translation, but it's not very good. So that's accepted. So with ChatGPT, if you place it out there, hold it up, show students, or as I say, all UCL students are given free access to Copilot. If UCL's doing that, then the students should be empowered to use it, and we then have to think, how do we want to help them use it? And how can we produce people who can shape the future using these tools? And we can only do that, I think, if they become critical readers of the output of AI.
Please join me in thanking Professor.